Hey, how you doing? This is Steve Hodge. Yes, Steve Hodge once again. This is episode 6 of Building with Steve Hodge. All right, a platform we talk about good things with phenomenal people. All right, behind me, my favorite is King Grand 1983 Jean-Michel Basquiat. I don't own the original yet, but something tells me that I will eventually. All right, it makes me feel comfortable. Surround yourself with good art, good people, good culture. All right, I have a distinguished panel with me. You guys can see Dr. Stephen Hodge, founder of Grace Worship Center Church in Hartford, Connecticut. Down below, we have Jeff Kennerly, financial advisor, and principal on assignment, Jesse White. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
It is an awesome pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Now, don't be uptight, guys. Let's have a really good time. I really respect who you guys are, what you're doing, and the movements that you are. Jesse White, sir, just so you know,
Yes, sir.
I studied a lot the last 48 hours trying to get some stuff on you. And when I heard someone refer to you as the new Steve from Capitol, I said, whoa.
Oh, you're talking about Steve Perry?
Yeah, Steve Perry.
Whoa, he's moving. That means he's moving units.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Ask me or let me know who said that because I want to write him a check.
Wow.
Steve Perry, he's definitely a mover and a shaker in education. You know what I mean? To go from, I think he lives in Middletown. Don't ask me how I know. I'm not stalking or anything. But he lives in Middletown and, has done some great things at Capitol Prep. And then, CNN and all of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, maybe God will give me that platform one day.
Yeah, that's huge. Real quick background. I happen to know these gentlemen quite well. The handsome gentleman with the paint on top of his hair. That handsome gentleman is my father. Yes. And he is a centerpiece in my life, not just as a man, but as a role model. And I think that's huge. Jesse White, we used to hoop back in the day. And what's scary was that you were an athlete back then. Jeff, if you want to think of the strong water bug, give me a Derek Fisher.
Okay.
Player. That's exactly what he was.
There we are.
He would sit like right under you. He was strong with us because we weren't hitting the weight check. He
right.
His girth. He had not build, but he had a girth to him that we didn't have yet. So he wielded that. And it was interesting. So we used to have some battles, always competitive.
Oh, now, and Steve was a sharpshooter and quick and could jump. And he was the guy who you had to put your hands on because if not, he was gone somewhere. You didn't want to get embarrassed.
Yeah.
So you gotta stay next to him. Put a little weight on him.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I got Jeff down there. I've only been I played ball professionally for 10 years. I call it minimum wage basketball, but nonetheless, pro ball, running around, hoping that somebody paid me on time when they did ever pay me. But before that, I always say that I've been on 2 teams. All right, 2 teams. And one of those teams, I mean that you would leave a piece of yourself on the floor for your teammates. You would die for them in that moment. You would fight for them in that moment. And one of those teams happens to be Manchester Community College, getting myself together, getting my academics, getting my body together after high school. And Jeff came in my sophomore year.
Yeah.
He was coming in from New Britain with a strong reputation. And he looked like a big, but he moved like a guard, which gave him, he was more settled for this game. Like the way the game is now, Jeff was ahead of his time. But a quick story is the game that I actually got recruited. They actually, Jeff knows this. Max wanted Jeff. I was a throw-in. He wanted Jeff, myself, and my man Gary as a shooter. He would have a good guard, he'd have a shooter, and he'd have somebody to man the paint, somebody active that can guard and defend the basket as well as score. And Jeff was injured. And that game we were getting smashed. CCRI was loaded. They had a Division I player. They had a couple other guards. They were just loaded. But I picked up full court. I had about 15. I hit a couple threes.
Yeah.
I had a really good game. And Jeff played about 8 minutes when we got it within 15. That's how bad it was. We got within 15, Jeff got off the bench. And when I tell you we ran this swing, we swung it one way, misdirection, and reversed it. Jeff caught it on the baseline, 2 dribbles. Off. We getting hammered, but the way he tore that rim off, I still to this day remember that. Like, he dunked that ball on that bad ankle, like somebody was, like he was trying to make a statement. And from then on, it was his world. It was his world. And I wish that we had one more year together. But more than that, we were part of a team. We would die for each other in that moment. And we had a run in the NCAA.
Yep.
We had a run.
Yep. We got to the Sweet 16.
Really, yeah, it was a
we
big
made it to the Sweet 16 and then lost to Roxbury, who went to the Elite Eight, and I think they went on to win it. But, you know, I appreciate all that Steve was giving. But Steve was, you know, when we talk about leadership, he was the leader. He was the alpha male on that team in terms of being able to make sure everyone was focused. And it was that helped coalesce that team so that we could have the success that we had. And it was truly a players' team. Yes, we had a coach, but it was the way that we coalesced around this singular goal of winning, right? Not allowing Roxbury to come in, not allowing CCRI to come in and just have their way with us. That is what, me coming out of high school, not necessarily being highly recruited, but there was something about that, to his point, that team and how we came together, and it allowed me to flourish. Right? I was a late bloomer, and so I was able to bloom in that particular environment with him and Gary, some of the other guys, but it really was Steve, man. And he just continued to do that and continues to do that to this day. With everything that he does, everything he touches, it just seems like it takes off. And so, as much as, he talks about me coming across the lane on it, I knew if I got a rebound, I got to find him. I'm trying to get an assist. Because if I got it back out to him, it's probably going to go in. He may miss the first one, but if I get it back to him, I'm going to get one in my column. So it was great kind of having that environment around us. And again, it carries over to where we are now. His ability to be able to bring us together on this call and have a mindfulness about what's happening around us and wanting to have a call to action. That's what he did at practice. That's what he did in games. It was a call to action. I got a clip of a dunk I caught. It was a break. I dunked on 2 people, and seeing his reaction was the funniest of them all because he was the hypest, and I caught the dunk. But it was just that energy he had, right? And that brought everyone together to have us go on a run. In that particular game, we went on a run after that. And so it was that. And so, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come into this space and have a dialogue with you guys.
Yeah. And making a seamless transition with that thread, with Jeff, I seen he paused on it, is we actually hijacked that team. It was a revolution. We didn't really care for the coach anymore. We didn't feel like he was using us to our full capability. And I led that charge. And yes, I'm saying no, 25 years later, but we did that. But we did it for the right reasons. We wanted it for us. We wanted us to have something. We knew that we had the core group of guys that will be moving on, and we had guys coming in that were going to take over. And it was a revolution. And I had no idea that it was called leadership then. I was just doing what felt right. And I think the seamless transition of this is what we're dealing with right now in our country. We are now unhappy with leadership. Now, I speak for us as America, but as far as Black America, we've been quote unquote unhappy and with how things have been going for the last 400 years. I do not want to get into the idea that we're here to bash or whatever. I want to really dig into this thing. And in that moment, Jeff, I'm glad we just spoke about it. I know we were joking, but we recognized that we had to quote unquote, mobilize and put some things in action. We literally ran our own plays. We ran our own sets. We knew who to get the ball to. We went on a 9-game run, and guys were able to get looks at schools through this. So there was some fruitful things that came of this revolution, that came of us mobilizing in this moment. So right now, without saying it, I hate even saying his name. We are in I believe, a once-in-a-lifetime moment. COVID-19 hit and things changed. And then as they changed, I believed in my mind that they were starting to shift. I believe that we're looking at things different. And just like that, the murder of George Floyd changed everything. And not just in this country, because of social media and the internet, people jumped on this wave. Nothing better than seeing New Zealand, Germany, different countries come together for our cause. And the cause being this systemic, blatant disregard for who we are, what we bring to the table, and what we should be allowed. And having you guys in your own right here is that. So I'm gonna move right into it. The first question, and this came up last week talking to Dr. Hodge about leadership. Gentlemen, it seems generic, but I know it's a big deal. One of my favorite TED Talks, they talk about leadership being the greatest commodity, the most limited commodity on earth. And now in this day and age, it's hard to find. What does leadership mean to you guys? Anyone can take it.
Well, leadership to me, again, let me first of all say thank you, Stephen, and for those who are viewing, this is I call him my number one. This is my firstborn, and it's an outstanding privilege for me to watch the growth, progress of a young man who plowed through challenges of life and now finds himself in a position where many depend upon him. He has his family, our family, and I think it's amazing just sitting on the sidelines watching. I have this thing now, and I'm going to get into this, but I have this thing now. God has blessed my wife and I to have 3 amazing children, amazing daughter, and amazing grandchildren. And I've spent my life, the early part of my life, doing my best to place our sons in the right lanes so that they can fulfill their purpose in life. And now, one of the pleasures I have now when I'm around them is to sit back now and let them lead, because I don't need to say a whole lot now. I listen to what's coming out and I follow their lead now. And in that sense, I find it very pleasing to be able to do so. With that being said, thank you, son, for allowing me to be on this spot and to share with these amazing men as well.
Thank you for being here.
I am as a pastor, as a father, as a son, as a leader in a lot of ways. I'm having a challenge these days. And the thing that I'm really addressing now is leadership. In scripture, I've been teaching about this whole idea of the groaning. The Bible talks about in Romans chapter 8, if you don't mind me sharing that. In Romans chapter 8, Paul is talking about 2 types of groaning. He says, number one, actually 3 groanings. He says, number one, that the earth is groaning for the manifestation of the sons of God, or if you will, for the revealing of the children of God. Then it talks about the human being, the person groaning, that they would be clothed upon with a new body. Then there's another groaning that's talked about as relates to how when we don't know what we should say, what we should pray for, we don't know what we should even ask for properly, and that we need aid from the Holy Spirit to help us. And he does it with groanings. And what I've discovered about a groan is simply a protest. A groan is a protest because it is saying that I am not originally created like this. And so now with all of this injustice that's happening, now with all of this evil that's going on, now with all of this revelation of what has already been systemic already, with all of this, what happens is a groan goes out because this is not a part of the original plan. And so what happens now, we're made, if you will, we're made from the dirt, from the clay. God made us from that, and he made us in a perfect sense in the beginning. Then, of course, with the deception of the enemy and the fall of man, now the earth, which we are made of, now recognizes this is not how we were made. And so the earth now, or creation, if you will, is now groaning and protesting. Like, hey, something is trying to get in the way of what my original intent is, you know? And so what I see, when I see the people protesting, and even myself, I protest over food. I mean, we protest over a lot of stuff. When food ain't right, we protest, you know? You know, come on, when they bring the food out and it's not right, we protest. We're always protesting about something.
Yeah.
There's always a protest going on. And I think that it's okay to protest. It's okay to groan. But my key issue now is, how do we get past the groaning? How do we get past the protest? We're being heard. Great, outstanding. Yeah. I mean, like an amazing wave now, it is unstoppable. Momentum has picked up. And if you stand in the way of momentum, you will get run over. Right. Momentum is rising now. And what I see now is, okay, the sound is there. The voices are being heard now. Okay, what's the plan of action? And the plan of action comes from leadership. And the key is, for me, I'm bellyaching because I'm concerned about the leadership that we have in our nation. I'm concerned about leadership in different places, but the leadership we have in the nation is appalling. It's really concerning to me, because I don't see the compassion for humanity. Back out of that right now.
Boom, I love it. And I'm gonna catch it right there. Listen, Jesse, I want you to jump in here. And this is important, I wanna catch it. Jeff, hang in there, because your piece is something that's really been on my heart. That financial piece is on my heart. That piece has been like hitting me lately. Jesse, if you can, in what you're doing, Doctor talked about the potential, whether it's a euphemism or whether it's reality, of civil war, you know what I mean, of a civil war. You're dealing with young people. Now, my wife's in education as well. She's an IEP coordinator, so she leads a team of adults. You now are sitting on a platform, even as a principal on assignment. You're not only just dealing with the souls of these kids who are now getting all of these things ingested, they're having all of these things via social media, they're coming to school with these issues, these problems, and now on top of that, we stop school just like that, COVID-19, and while COVID-19 hits, this revolution hits, this unrest hits, they're protesting, they hear it, they smell it, and then on top of that, you have the adults that are now being given the task. I live with a wife. The task of now trying to bring education, quote unquote, formal education, online to kids who are at home, parents who are at work and dealing with the same things. What have you done? What have you put in place? What's been on your heart in regards to the potential of this country unraveling? What have you done to stay in contact with those souls, those kids and those families and your teachers and staff that are dealing with the same thing?
Yeah, so first of all, again, thank you so much for having us on the show. I wrote down in my paper, be first, right? Don't let the Dr. Bishop speak first, because the way he explains things is just like, I sort of want to sit in that spot for a minute, right? Forget about the rest of the questions. I just want to, you know, and he knows that, right? When he comes to our church and preaches, it's different, right? So, but to address your question about what we've done in this time of COVID-19, and then as well, you know, America's first pandemic, right, which is racism. What we've done is really, first of all, had to look at our teachers, right, and look at their well-being. I've had conversations with teachers who, you know, were on top of the world, were you know, had great rapport with kids and all of that kind of stuff. And then to see during this time, things may have shifted. And so understanding just the humanity of people, right? And understanding that even though they're professionals, they're also humans and they go through things just like everyone else. And so, you know, calling and saying, hey, look, you need to turn off the news. You need to get outside. You need to take a walk. You need to, you know, you need some motivation. You need some inspiration in order to be your best self, because we do have these young people, right? and their lives, their education, their future is really in your hands. And so, you know, it is the balance of being tough on one end, right, as a professional, but then also being caring and compassionate on the other end. And then we have students, we got to understand, you know, someone asked me a question yesterday about what keeps me up at night, right? And generally, you know, the Bible talks about the peace that surpasses all understanding if you keep your mind on Jesus, right? And so, you know, I do keep that at the forefront. But one thing that really does get me, you know, is the fact that I have some students who don't have Wi-Fi, right? I have students who, you know, we've had to provide computers for and laptops for, Chromebooks, and they're like, Mr. White, this is good, thank you, but I don't have, you know, the blood that runs through the stream, right? I don't have Wi-Fi at my house, right? And then you talk to parents who are like, look, situations with my finances, I'm not able to do that, right? And so trying to provide things like that for those students. You talked about your wife being an IEP coordinator, right? I think about our students who are already at a disadvantage in many cases, coming into the school, and now you throw this at them. You know, learning is I always say it's a social phenomenon, right? It is something that we do, especially with Black folks. We learned it through word of mouth. Yeah. You know, that was our initial education because we were not allowed legally to read, and so one way that we learned was through word of mouth. But at this point, you really can't do that in a way that you did. So I think for us especially, like, this has really set us back a little bit. And so what I've started doing is, if I notice that there's a student who is not engaged, we have all of the technology to monitor engagement. I do runs like when we were in school, every Friday I would go out and visit some homes, you know what I mean? And just say, like, how are you? Are you sick? Are you, like, what's going on? You know, and many times you would have parents who are working, parents who are sometimes, you know, on the front lines themselves, who are like, you know what, I thought my child was doing the work. You know what I mean? We spoke, they said that they were doing it, you know, and I trusted that they were doing it, right? And so, you know, my latest, I took a kid to Starbucks because I was like, look, you know, you're going through some stuff, right? And he had been through some stuff anyway in his life, and this really set not only him back, but his mom back. And so just to let them know that, look, we're here in the community. We have been tasked with educating your children, but not only about the content of math, science, social studies, and English, but really about just how to live and how to, you know, problem solve, how to analyze, all of those types of things that are just human functions, and not necessarily the content so much.
Yeah, and beating that path and going, you know, I understand and I appreciate that. Going back, Dr. Bishop, I want to throw this to you, Jeff. You talked about immature leadership. You talked about unrest. You talked about the idea of protest. You talked about the idea of activism and moving forward with leadership and the lack thereof in this moment, overall, especially. And let's keep it 100. I'm particularly in this moment not just talking about Trump. I'm talking about the system as a whole. I'm a business owner now, and going through the process of trying to applying for the loan.
PPP.
Yeah. If I told you, I won't reveal too much, but the glitches on that are huge. And if they can make that glitch, I'll edit it out. They double credited us. We got a double credit. I'm a small business. I'm not going to touch the money because I know how the IRS gets down. You know what I mean? We'll use what was given to us. There's double. We'll throw that into account. But if they did that to me, small business, if they gave me double, just imagine if they made this glitch to another monstrous institution. All right. And the reason I'm saying this is I'm like, the leadership thing smacked me in the face. I'm like, this is bad leadership. And all I have, of course, outside of my relationship with my creator, is I am the king of my castle. It's my home. It's my family. I have a business. I have employees. I have children. And you want to come home and give them some information, not just about COVID-19, but about what I call the revolution. And when there's no one at the top giving or distributing or, you know, delegating responsibility, it blew my mind. Now, I happen to have Governor Gavin Newsom, who's doing his thing out in California. He's doing a phenomenal job. But it blew my mind to know that there are so many different questions, so many different ideas, so much information on top of social media. It blew my mind. But to the financial part, people are hurting, especially the 13% of the country, which is Black America. They're hurting. Now, Jeff, you've been almost militant about this thing for years. No one ever talks about or even refers to leadership in regards to finances. It usually looks a certain way. So here you are, you've been talking about not just financial literacy and all of that good stuff. You've been talking about it amongst our people. We're going through it right now. We've already been going through it. But I can only imagine some of the things and stories that will come as a reverb of this moment. How does what you do in that world become magnified and bolded in this moment?
Oh man, it's you really get to see the dichotomy of two worlds that exist, right? So, in terms of what I do and who the people I work with, it's this interesting piece, and I was telling Steve before, is that there are many different ways to protest, right? I'm not a frontline protester. I'm not in the streets. I have 2 children. I have elderly folks I have to take care of, and so they're high risk for getting COVID, right? So there's a risk tolerance that I'm not willing to take with being on the streets. But I interact with those people, but I also interact with a number of attorneys who are in the courts trying to help this thing out, right? So I see this thing through and through. I have educators who I speak to about how they're navigating the education system in terms of what's happening now. And my protest is making sure that the individuals who I work with, they are being, in most cases, they are funding. When we think about the civil rights movement, we think about the marchers, but there were tons of people behind that organizing. There was money behind that, bailing people out. That infrastructure was just as important as Brother Dr. King being out there in the front, because if not for having that infrastructure, they would have still been in jail. They wouldn't have had that infrastructure to be able to get it. So my protest is making sure that back infrastructure is in place, that individuals who want to give to organizations that are out there doing what they need to be doing, they're doing it efficiently. They're doing it effectively, because at the end of the day, when you do it efficiently and effectively, it helps them to maintain their generational wealth, which they will then help to pass along. This whole thing is about us as a people not necessarily leveraging, not properly leveraging our capital, not being able to, the little that we may have at an individual basis, at the collective, it's enormous, right? And I think you're starting to see it now more so, where people are we're in this cancellation environment where, oh, you don't do what we want, well, you're canceled.
Oh,
you're canceled.
Yeah.
And so we're starting to flex those muscles, but there still is what I'm starting to see, which is encouraging to me, is that people are starting to wake up to this idea of, I need ownership. I need ownership. I love the fact, before we got on this call, you made a comment to your father about, thanks for that, having that fully paid off home on my credit. Like, that's ownership. Ownership allows you access and the ability to do things that you wouldn't necessarily have the ability to do. And so when I'm talking to the younger generation, when I say younger generation, I'm talking 40 and below. Maybe they make 6 figures, but they didn't have the benefit of having, great grandma who left $300,000, $400,000, and so there's that buffer there, and they're building it for themselves, and they're like, I can do this. I just need the right guidance for it.
Yeah,
that's encouraging, because they're trying to do it. They're trying to build their own thing. They're using technology to build their own. Stephen, you're a perfect example. You're using your platforms that's available to you to make and grow an enterprise.
Right.
That's great for me to see. And then I pair that with my older clients who are established and have what they need, and some of the organizations they work with. One of the organizations, which is not a client of mine, but I'm extremely impressed with how they've carried themselves during this time, is the church that I tend to watch is Alfred Street Baptist Church. They're in Alexandria. They're a church that's been around more than 100 years. In 1863, I think they were founded. And and during this time, they've given away $500,000 to area nonprofits, to other churches who are smaller congregation churches that are doing what they need to be doing, but they just need the funding, and they've been funneling that out. So it's not just this idea of, you know, we're taking care of our congregation, but we're also taking care of those around us and making sure it goes out, and they're very clear and so that only happens by planning. That's only happening by having a really good financial stewardship leading up to this, because no one knew this was coming, but they had the ability to be able to adjust. And what we're going to see, I think, is on the other side of this, organizations who had the ability to be able to adjust and maneuver will be the ones who will come out on the other side of this stronger, have a stronger, you know, foundation to them.
Yeah.
And those who are not able to do it, which will typically be our organizations, unfortunately, will not, because they haven't had access. They didn't have someone walk them through the PPP application. You know, I mean, business owners I talk to about the PPP application or the EIDL, and say, okay, this is what you need to be doing. This is how you need to be thinking about this. Watch for those minefields that come along, because there are some traps in there. And so it's really important to have that access to individuals who can give you, who's willing to have the conversation, because we historically don't have that when we walk into those offices. You know, the individuals who have been in the business for a long time, who don't necessarily look like me, they have this I'm the Wizard of Oz posture, right? You know, I'm talking down to you, and you know, no, I'm not going to take your $300,000. That's not enough for me. I'm like, man, these people, you know, someone, that's not the way you treat folks, but that's part of, they've never been around when they've never been around African Americans, so they haven't been around other minorities. They don't understand that's what they have, and that means a lot to them. So how do we think about everything they want to do goal wise and make that a legacy thing for them? Because that's legacy money for our community. And so it's those are the things that I've always been. Financial literacy is important. I would love for it to get in. It needs to be in education, like flat out. It should be in. I think you can start with it in middle school, and then high school. It should definitely be a part of it. I mean, the reason
please forgive me. This is a real thing. You know, I haven't spoke to you about it, but this is a real thing in my house. We're struggling with the idea of the quote unquote country opening back up, which suggests that we are a business, the country opening back up. Right. So we're struggling with the idea of September coming and our daughter is going back to school. Yeah. And she is special. Everybody believes their kids are special, but she's got this entertainment thing. She wants to do different. And I'm just like, I want to support that. And in this moment, I've recognized virtually that I can connect her with someone in France who can teach her to dance. I can connect her with her grandmother, who is one of the most incredible singers you can meet with. I can connect her with a dance academy online. And you know what I mean? We can do all these things online without having to go there. You know what I mean? So it's almost like, and also the financial piece. What's an asset? What's a liability? Right? You know what I mean? So I'm really starting to understand that these things, this literacy, these words, these things need to be there. And then of course, you know, her mom being in the education world, you know, formally speaking, she's even starting to kind of change how she believes. So many words. I believe there needs to be a reformation, and I believe that we've got nothing but time. My wife suggested in one of her meetings, and she kind of had to ask for forgiveness. I said, "This, you know, say what you got to say." She said, "We are really burning our employees out, our staff out, our teachers, our support staff are burning themselves out now, trying to basically bring what we've been doing in the classroom." She said, "No, this is different. We've got to really change our approach." And she's like, "This now gives us opportunity to pour more things." So when you talk about financial literacy, I now have more value for it. I have a better understanding. And it took, you know, being a part of business to learn that. And I think that's a grand piece. So putting this all together, watch this question, guys. Watch how I put it together. Black folks, all right? You get up in the morning, you know what I mean? We've been here, you know, not doing the whole slavery 400 years. We know what this is, all right? We know what this is. You get up, and spirituality is a big thing. We go to church. That's what Black folks do. We do that, all right? We go to a job, a lot of us, a great number of us, just to pay bills. We bust our butts, sometimes work 2 jobs. We bust our butt just to pay bills. Oh my goodness, you want to go to school? All right, well then, we got to take out loans and grants and these things, and then that debt rolls right into the next generation, and then we go to school. Our kids go to school while we do these things. Our kids go to school. So, and then of course, you want some type of activity athletically, and that's where I come in. I think the 4 of us, we know this already. We're in a privileged position to be able to move the conversation forward. And whether I get 2 people to watch this or whether I get 2 million people to watch this, I think by having you guys here, I know we do this all the time. We always, I'm a hip hop junkie. Top 5 MCs. We talk about the GOAT, Michael Jordan or LeBron James. And then my father started throwing, he starts throwing other people out there. Dr. J. Dr. J, he was doing that in the doing that. We have all these conversations. What's the best film? I like this, the Godfather. Let's, for the sake of the argument, have a good time. We have these different, spirituality, education, financial literacy, planning, sports. What could we do to put a tangible plan on the table if the quote unquote people gave us a seat at the table and said, we hear you? What do we do? Now, the only piece that I don't have here, and I we don't have the police mentality, the police brain. I wanted to pick that brain as well. I couldn't find the right person. And right now, to be honest with you, people I reached out to, they don't have they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
They don't want to do it. And I understand. They have family, I get it. But right now, it's just, for me, it's not a time to bite your tongue. It's not a time. And I'm not an activist. Like you said, Jeff, this is the platform that I have. I'm not an activist. I probably have no business out there protesting because I'll probably be the dude in the front. So I can stay my butt home, for my wife, for my children, and for me. But what could we do? Actionable items with the faith world, education world, financial world, to put a plan of action together to move us forward. I don't think that it's coming in the form of a Malcolm X or Martin Luther King. I think the days of that quote unquote figurehead leader are dead. They've shown us that you give us a figurehead, we'll kill them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think it's time for the network and the tree to grow of knowledge and activism and intelligence, which is leadership. Yeah. What does it look like to you guys?
So can I start off before Bishop Doctor takes us, again? No.
So we'll let him. He'll back cleanup.
I saw him licking his lips. I was like, wait. Let me jump in because he got a plan, right?
Right. You put him in at the end of the game. He hits free throws.
Right.
If you believe that, I got something else to tell you. So here's the thing. Proverbs 23:7, right? It says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, right? And so as an educator, I know that one of my jobs is to really influence the minds of the kids who are in front of me, as well as the staff that work with these kids, right? And so I'm reading a book called How to Be Anti-Racist by Ibram Kendi. Amazing book, amazing groundbreaking and thought-provoking book. And basically what he talks about is this concept of being anti-racist. And we often hear folks who say, well, I'm not a racist, right? And he's like, yeah, but that's not good enough, right? You are either racist or you're anti-racist. And so what it caused me to do is think about some of the ideas and some of the policies and things like that I've even promoted because they are tradition, right? And so one thing that I think that we must do is, one, we gotta have a lens of an anti-racist, saying that everything that we do, every policy we create, and I believe that curriculum is policy for a classroom, right? And so every curriculum that we create, every policy we create has to be anti-racist. I just gave a speech and I told our white friends, I said, look, one thing that you gotta do is when you go vote, you have to vote with me in mind. You gotta vote with the plight of Black people and brown people in mind. Right, and so that's the thing that I think undergirds everything that we come up with. Every plan has to be anti-racist. I'll give you an example. every college, when you apply to college, you have to write on your application whether or not you've been suspended from school, right? And so initially, for me, it was just a right-wrong thing as opposed to a black-white thing. But then, if you look at the research, Black and brown students are suspended at a much higher rate than our white counterparts.
Especially if you're with special needs kids.
Exactly. So now we're cutting off a whole group of people at the knees because they've been suspended. And that suspension could have been, I skipped class on a day, or I missed a certain amount of classes, whatever. It might not be violent, it might not be drug related, but you got that suspension on your record. And if you have, now we're putting the guidance counselors in sort of like a moral conundrum. Like, am I honest? And do I say, yep, this kid has been suspended? Or knowing what this is going to do for the kid, do I say, nah, I'm not going to, right? And so you have a whole group of kids. Now, before this, we might not have thought about that as racist or anti-racist. It was just right and wrong, right? You got suspended. Well, I got to report that. But the truth of the matter is that we're cutting a bunch of kids off from higher education, which we know has implications for, jobs and wealth and all of that kind of stuff because of an infraction that might have happened in freshman year, And so we really got to think about those policies. I think that, I would challenge boards of education to really go through their policy books and say, all right, you know what? Do we have policies that are on the books that really do discriminate against people of color?
Right, and you're right.
So from an education standpoint,
that's really good. I'm thinking about the high school. I had an incident in school that could have been portrayed incorrectly if people didn't know. And I'm thinking about that. I was taking a bus. You remember, we live in Chappelle. I'm taking a bus from Chappelle to Buckley. That's extremely hard to be there and get there on time. And depending on the policy of the school, X amount of tardies could mean suspension.
Exactly.
And wow.
Exactly.
So
we got to think about stuff like that. And honestly, I was talking to someone who said, if you're following tradition, and we think about our history here in this country, if you're following tradition, more times than not, you're on that racist end of the spectrum. Yeah, you really are, right? If we think about certain laws that are being enacted right now, police may be within their rights, right, according to the law, to do some of the things that they're doing. But those things that when we think about even the police department and how policing was started in this country in the first place, right? Right. It started as a racist entity, and so now folks who have said one thing during this, and I'm gonna stop talking, but one thing during this COVID time and everything that's going on, one thing that I have been challenged to do is to try to break away from a lot of the tradition, and really start thinking differently, right? And even for my own children, I'm an educator, right? I have three daughters doing very, very well in school. But one of my daughters says, I want to be an entrepreneur. And she's really, really good at making money. I mean, she'll make something, she'll sell it, she'll do whatever. She has, over $1,000 in the bank right now, and she's doing her thing. But for me, I'm like, well, I want you to sort of I want you to get a job, right? Like I want you to, and I had to sort of challenge my mental model to say, nah, you know what? This might be what she's good at, right? And so if that's her, for example, you were blessed by the bishop to be able to go play basketball. In our house, it was like basketball is a side thing, right? It's not you're not going pro, Jay. You're not, You know what though,
Jesse? I don't think it was because he was open-minded. I think people forget that he was a hooper. So I think that piece of his heart. Yeah. I think that piece of his heart.
And you were the oldest,
right in the piece. I mean,
my brother, gifted bassist, right? Mm-hmm. At the same time, it was like, yeah, but you got to go to college. You can do that, right? He was playing for Patti LaBelle, going all over the world, but you better have that job. You're going to Drexel. You're gonna right. And so he ended up, thank God, doing both. But I think that for me, it's changing these mental models, right? Tradition is not always the best.
Yeah. Right. You're spot on with that, because that leads directly into what on my side, on the economic side, it's that entrepreneurial mind versus you being a worker. And this is a theory that I have, and I at some point in my life I will go back and try to quantify it. But I told you, it came to light with my wife and I. I first started dating her. Her family was part of her family's from Snow Hill, or not from Alabama, from like Selma, Alabama. And with the Great Migration, they moved up to Detroit. And so like her lineage, great grandfathers and stuff, they used their trades. They were master plumbers. They were hustlers, right? Master plumbers, ice cream truck. They had an ice cream truck. They had a bunch of different entrepreneurial spirits, right? So they have that. And I look at my family who's down there, and we, were on we still own the land. We still own the land. We minded the land. We had, crops and things of that nature, but it wasn't this kind of migration away. And I have this long-standing kind of wonder if back when our ancestors were slaves, you had really two groups. We had three groups. You had the house Negro, you had the runners, and then you had those who were like, now we're not running, right? So I would love to be able to understand I would love to track the runners, because the runners have a different mindset. I'm not about this. Nah, you're not going to have me just out here working on someone else for someone else. Yeah. I would love to be able to track where runners' families' lineage led.
Wow.
If a runner's mindset, runner's mindset led to the first millionaire for African Americans.
Right.
I can see why that's the case, right? Because I'm not saying on this. And then for those who stayed on the plantation, you think about the story of Juneteenth, and when they get down to Galveston, Texas, they tell them y'all actually been free for 2.5 years. Now you can go back to your plantation and ask them to give you a job and pay you a penny. And maybe they went back there. That's the mindset of I'm going to get a job and get a pension, and that's what I'm going to do.
That's a book, Jeff.
I was gonna say we gotta connect.
Like there has to be something
genetically being predisposed to being an entrepreneur or a worker.
Exactly. And so if I hear something about a young child who was like, I'm hustling, I want to make my own money, and they have a skill for doing that, that's a freedom of thought that when my entrepreneur clients, bruh, I love them because they come in and they just like spitball things, and all of a sudden you just see it start to come together. And then before you know it, they've put together these dissonant pieces, and all of a sudden, a couple of months down the road, they're like, "All right, boom, I'm executing on it." And then a year or two down the road, now that is a cash flow of a 7-figure cash flow for them. And you're like, man. That's a different mindset, right?
Different mindset.
It's a mindset of ownership. It's a mindset of taking control of what you're going to do. And although we all know that there is this system in place that is systemically there, and we have to navigate it, they're like, I get that, but let me make this over here. That's why I like this movement of, I think people are starting to really get engaged in becoming entrepreneurs, and you have so many different ways. Even if we all know that we all live by the go to traditional right of go to college, get your degrees, and go that route. But with the advent of the internet, the advent of the new trade, the new plumber, the new carpenter is web building, is programming,
coding.
How you can get your child to learn how to program, and they don't need a degree. They just throw this app out there, get it approved on Apple or get it approved on Android, that's just making money for you.
Yeah, we're almost finishing. On that note, Jeff, I'm about 3 weeks away from finishing an app, and this is just from having a conversation with one of my ex-players who went into coding and programming. We joked about it 2 years ago. Now all of a sudden he said, "Coach, I know how to do this." I said, "Well, let's go ahead and do it." So here we are, filming and almost being done with, putting everything in there, and we're gonna have an app now where I can release some of this stuff that was. So I totally understand. Dr. Bishop, all right?
Yes.
We have to land this plane. We've put together actionable items within our realms. We've talked about the meaning of leadership, how it applies to the moment. We've got to look over the hill. I said to my wife the other day, I very rarely have moments of lows, but I've been having them more frequently now. It just seems like I know states are opening back up, and I know that as far as social media goes, people aren't going as hard as they would with the movement. And I'm saying to myself, no, we need to be going harder. I'm one of those minority of people who believe I don't want to see a baseball swung, I don't want to see a jump shot, and I don't want to see a touchdown right now. I want your attention on this all the time, forever, until you're uncomfortable enough to make change. But with that being said, fellas, I'm just wondering really quickly if y'all can take me into the world of what you've done and take me over the hill. What does it look like when, quote unquote, we go back to, I know it's not a real thing, normal? What does it look like over the hill? What are you projecting that Black America looks like? Education, finance, spirit world. What does it look like when we can finally look over the mountain and see that fresh air again, see that sun? What does it look like?
Well, for me, I've had that conversation probably about 2 weeks ago because I was challenged with it amongst my peers. And the thing that is so refreshing to me is I don't call myself a extreme radical, but I do call myself a person who is very radical in the sense that I am a non-traditionalist. Nothing against some of the traditions that's out there, but it'd be hard pressed to have me wear a collar.
Right.
I wear it because for some people that's what they need. It's, you know, it's very hard pressed for me to go 4 full weeks or 4 to 5 weeks a month to have in church to have a suit on. You may get me 2 weeks, and that's for those who need it. The other part, I'm very casual. And I'm introducing this because I know that tradition has robbed in many ways, particularly religious tradition, have robbed us in many ways of truth. Truth frees you. Tradition many times incarcerates you.
Ooh, yeah.
And I say that because this change right now is causing those who had certain traditional doctrinal positions to have to abandon them now because they do not have the comforts of doing what they normally did. And I'm laughing my head off. I'm enjoying it because I see walls coming down now from all of this theological stuff and jargon that they put on the table and called it God, and it wasn't. You know, and I see the walls coming down. Now what you gonna do? You can't do it like you normally used to do. Now what you gonna do? What you gotta say now? Are you gonna force me now to be unsafe because your belief system and your dogma has, you know, no, that stuff is breaking up.
Yeah.
And I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
Yeah.
Now, I share that because I got to use this, and I'm going to step out of this. We started off talking about the team. We used the basketball experiences that we all had. You brought that to the table, Stephen, and we all had pieces in that. Interestingly enough, you made distinction between you and Jeff's role on the team. Here it is. You asked the question, okay, what about the horizon? And then what do we do? What's the plan of action? I think the plan of action is what successful businesses do, successful organizations do. And that is, yeah, you got a key leader there, but a key leader can't do everything. In my assignment, I'm the lead pastor. But you better believe I cannot do everything by myself. I need to have a point guard. Watch how I'm going with this. I need to have a point guard. I need to have a small forward. I need to have a power forward. I need, you know what I mean? I need center. I need every position to be played, which simply means that a center is not a guard. If I can go back to that particular tradition, in the sense that everybody's needed. What you bring to the table, Hodge, what you bring to the table, Jeff, what you bring to the table, White, I think is so critical because if we get in a room and you allow us to master what we do, here's the thing, and you put us all together, we will be one that carry different flavors You know what I mean? Education, that's really what it's about.
Yeah.
It's really about education. And if you bring us all together, we will educate you in the grace that we have for the purpose that we've been placed on this planet to serve.
That's it.
And then as a result of that, you put 5 guys on the team or 5, whoever, female, 5, mix it up on the team, and you demand families to come and sit down and listen to this.
Yes.
So that we can be educated. I think it starts with the family. You bring a team together, you sit a family down, and you pour into the family. You pour into the family. You pour into the family until the family realizes it's okay to be who you were created to be and go after it.
Yes.
So we don't have to be necessarily confined to the educational process that schooling brings us, but we can also branch out into the giftings, into the graces that God has given us, and the revelations, watch this, that allows education to have to wait, in the sense that we don't have the schooling. Come on, I'm done. Adam, hey,
get the organ going in here. Wow.
Yes, sir.
Watch this.
Yes, sir.
Adam and Eve, they were created fully mature. They were not born. Watch this. And I'll let y'all think about this. Education is a part of the fall.
Not a part of the original. It's not a part of the original story.
Exactly. I'm backing out. Y'all, I'm going to leave that on the table right there.
Story.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
Listen, I know we got to roll. I'm not messing with that. That's exactly how you finish. Listen, gentlemen, I'm going to leave with this. I personally believe at the end of this, during this moment, I believe that there's a plow, if you will. There's a plow, and it's rolling and clearing the land. And all of the nonsense, all of the fake stuff, all of the nonsense that's supposed to be there is now wiping away. And people with legitimate content, legitimate hearts, legitimate skills are going to be pushed to the front. The world is going to now start to look like Dr. Hodge, Principal White, Jeffrey Kennerly, Steve Hodge. I think our leadership now changes face. And now we can then take that leadership, as Dr. Bishop said, as Principal White, as Jeff said, sit at that dinner table with your family and start to disseminate all of this phenomenal information. How to be financially literate, how to educate yourself, because now we know that formal education and education are not the same. It was a scam. I'm not going to get into that. But I believe that this is a moment for the real, and I believe that I'm on screen with the vibrations of the real. Dr. Bishop, you are a gem. Thank you. Jeff, you are a gem. Thank you.
Yes.
You are a gem. I talked about this in episode 3. I had a hard time accepting the vernacular of calling other men kings because I only see one king in my life, my creator. But I now understand that you are all stewards, AKA kings, of your independent castles, education, finance, spiritual. I love it. You guys are kings. All right. If I had the good editor, I'd take crowns and put them on each
and we serve the King of Kings.
Right.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. I know your day must move on. Thank you for taking the time. It gets no better than this. And as I thought it would be, this was the best.
Happy Juneteenth, man.
Happy June.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, we're doing something good tonight. And I'm gonna make sure that I'm only shopping at Black owned. I live in Inglewood, so I can do that. It might be.
There you go.
Amen.
Awesome.
That's it. Amen.
God bless y'all. I love y'all. Appreciate you.
Thank you.